who are visiting the city from all parts of the world, from the United States, South Africa, Australia, Indonesia, Singapore, China, and many others, even just throughout Europe alone. It's tremendous that you've all come together. You've all come together to be in Belfast and to discuss some of the most important issues affecting your industries and your universities in the fields that you work in. It's tremendous. Just to put into light a bit of context of the room that you're sitting in right now, on Sunday we had Robert Pattinson, who starred in Twilight, Charlie Hunnam, who starred in Sons of Anarchy, and Ciaran Miller, all in this room shooting a new movie called The Lost City of Zed. So my advice is to have a good look around you and to enjoy the scenery, and to, when the film comes out, you'll be able to say that I was in that room in Belfast. How much or how prominent the scene is, I'm not too sure. But it's fantastic to have you all here, and I hope that you have a great conference, but also I hope that you have a great time in Belfast, that you get an opportunity to explore the city and all of its treasures. I know that you're finishing at, of course, the glorious Titanic Belfast, but I hope that you get the opportunity to explore our nighttime economy in the Cathedral Quarter and on the Lisburn Road, amongst the Crumlin Road Jail and a couple of our tours. So you're very welcome in the city, and maybe I hope to see you in and around City Hall, maybe after the next 2 days on one of the public tours. But you're very welcome to be here, and it's my privilege to even announce that your conference is now open. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Hugh McAleenan, and I am Pro-Vice Chancellor of Research and Innovation at Ulster University. It's my great privilege and pleasure to be the chair of this debate tonight, and I would like to add my welcome to that of the Deputy Lord Mayor. You're most welcome. But those of you who haven't been here before, I hope over the next couple of days you'll find something that will make you want to return. I'm sure you will. Looking at the Deputy Lord Mayor, it just shows how old I'm getting, you know. I wondered, was there a school trip that he got locked in, you know. But he's doing a really brilliant job here in Belfast, and I was delighted that he was going to be available to welcome you here. Okay, the debate. First of all, I want to tell you that the motion is all that safety research is no use to industry. It's just purely academic. So that is the topic that we're going to debate this evening. Before I introduce you to the protagonists, could I ask you to put your mobile phones on silent or on vibrate? We're not expecting a fire drill, but if you do hear the fire alarm, you see the various exits. But just follow me because I'll be the first one out. Okay, for introductions, for the motion, so we've got an industry team who are going to obviously say that it is purely academic, and we obviously have an academic team who are going to argue against that particular motion. So first of all, I'm going to introduce you to Jerry Ayres. Jerry is a keynote speaker and trade union worker for construction, forestry, mining, engineering union. Energy, thank you. Melbourne, Australia, and Jerry is OHS manager with the CFMEU Construction and General Division. Previously, Jerry was an OHS advisor in the Victoria branch, and Jerry has been a member of the union working as a construction worker, builders, labourer from 1987 to 1995. He's passionate about health and safety, and he's completed an Associate Diploma in Applied Science, OHS, a Graduate Diploma in Occupational Hazard Management, a Master of Applied Science, OHS, and has submitted his PhD to the University of Ballarat. On construction, the title is on construction and organisational maturity in the Victorian construction industry. Should you not be an academic then? No? I can sounds like okay. Then we have Jackie McCoy here in the middle, Director of White Ink Architects, is a multi-award winning architect with experience as part-time tutor in Queen's University Belfast School of Architecture, Queen's University Professional Liaison Committee member, and Northern Ireland Building Regulations Advisory Committee member. And the final person on this team, the the industry team is Kevin McShane. He's past chairman of the Institution of Civil Engineers Northern Ireland and past chairman of the Professionals Council in Northern Ireland. He's former director of the RPS Group and he's currently working as an independent transport consultant. Kevin is responsible for the preparation of transport assessments, travel plans, mobility management plans, expert witness roles, public inquiries, planning appeals and general civil engineering design. Ooh. So those are the industry team who will be arguing for the motion. And on the other side we have the academic team. And first of all, Billy Hare. Put up your hand, Billy. Yes. Billy is Senior Fellow in Construction Management at Glasgow Caledonian University. And Billy graduated from Glasgow Caledonian with a first-class honours in construction management. And after a few years' experience in contracting, he was appointed to a full-time research position, undertaking work on several HSE-funded research projects with Ian Cameron. Billy is currently a Senior Research Fellow and also lectures part-time within the school, covering construction management and health and safety topics. In addition to this, he also represents the university on the Scottish Building Health and Safety Group and has recently completed his PhD integrating health and safety with construction planning through a best practice gateway model. So that's Billy. And then we have Yang Meng Ga. Have I said that correctly?
Yep.
Good, thank you. And he's assistant professor at the National University of Singapore. And his research interests include workplace safety and health, hybrid simulation, including system dynamics, agent-based and discrete event. And he's also interested in risk modelling, knowledge-based systems, infrastructure failure, fall protection, and accident investigation and resilience. And finally, last but not least, we've got Matt Hollowell, Assistant Professor at the University of Colorado at Boulder. He serves in the American Society of Civil Engineers Site Safety, Prevention through Design and Construction Research Committees, the Construction Industries Institute Safety Community of Practice, and the American Society of Safety Engineers Construction Practice Specialty and Technical Publications Committee. Wow. Matt actively conducts research in the field of construction safety, specialising in industry prevention strategies, risk management and cost modelling. So here's what we're going to do. They are going to either support the motion, and I'll just remind you one more time, the motion is all that safety research is no use to industry, it's just purely academic. So you've got the people on the support, the nearest table to the microphone, and then the people against, the academic team over on the far right. So we need to encourage controversy. Please do not hold back. Controversy should not be avoided. The debate topic has been purposefully selected because it does cause controversy not only within academia but also within industry. You must be prepared to do whatever is necessary, within reason, to support your case. Please remember this has been designed as a fun start to 2 days of really serious conference proceedings. Questions will be allowed from the floor. So I'm going to tell you the sequence of events. So first of all, we're going to have the pro, in other words, the person who is for the motion, the industry team, and that's going to start off with speaker 1, which is Jerry, and he's going to have 3 minutes, and then Billy is going to have another 3 minutes opposing the motion, and then we have speaker 2, and the role of speaker 2 really is a combination of really pushing home their own side's arguments, but all addressing the issue that has been raised by the previous speaker on the other side, and tackling on the reasoning of those people who are putting forward this argument. Then we're going to have speaker 3, and again 3 minutes each for these guys, and this speaker will summarise and reflect on the points made for or against the motion and offering a conclusion. So that will be what we do as part 1 of this exercise. Part 2, we're going to have what we call a head-to-head, and that is one of 25 minutes where each team will in turn present the opposition with a challenging question, and we will see how they get on. So that will take 25 minutes. If I feel that the question has been exhausted, I'll ask them to ask another question. And after that 25-minute period, I'm going to open it up to you. So you must listen really, really carefully. And you must challenge, and don't be afraid for you to be controversial. So you have 10 minutes to ask those questions. And finally, I'm going to ask you through a show of hands which team has won in your. But before I start and ask Jerry to come up here to the dais, I'd like to ask you. Okay, think about this carefully. Remember that the motion is all that safety research is of no use to industry. It's purely academic. I want a show of hands from you. Before you hear from these guys, I want a show of hands from you as to whether you support or whether you're against that motion. So do you support the motion that it's all purely academic, it's of no use to industry? Who would put up their hand for that? We obviously have a load of academics here. Okay, we've got 5 people. So just in case there are people sitting on the fence until they hear what you have to say, who would vote against that? Okay, we've got a. So, there's about I suggest.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Could we just use the term health and safety, not safety?
Okay.
I think that right for starters.
Okay, I'm happy to change the motion. So the motion is all that health and safety research is of no good to industry. It's purely academic. Do you think that will change the show of hands?
My notes are ruined now.
So does that mean we only have to turn 3 people?
You only have to turn. So there's 5 people who said that they were, for that motion, and the rest of them are against. So let's see how we get on. You have a bit of a hill to climb, colleagues on this side. So as I said, each of these colleagues have 3 minutes each, and we're going to start off with Jerry, and then we move to Billy, and then we move to Joan and Yang, and then we move to Kevin and Matt, and that'll be all of 18 minutes. So, Ciaran, just anything you want to say at this stage? We're happy to. Okay, thank you very much. So, could I ask you to welcome Jerry to the platform in the usual manner, please?
Thank you, everyone. You'd think as a trade union, it should be used to having the minority. The long trip from Australia is 24 hours, and in that 24 to 26 hours, we have a lot of time. And as I was reading a book by Patrick Zoom called Strategic Safety Management, I came across a nice little sentence. And I'm sure Patrick's got some copies he can sell you later on. At a discount, of course. The nexus between research and practice needs a model to bridge the gap. So there's already an acknowledgement that there is the gap between research and practice. The other interesting part of the book said that research methods are underpinned by sound reasoning, which is often quite the antithesis of industry, isn't it, when we talk about timing and programming and the pressures of production. We talk about research, we talk about having a plan, looking at the data, collecting the data, analysing the data, getting findings, getting a new model perhaps, getting a conclusion and getting a recommendation. And of course, one of the recommendations is more research. It's a wonderful time-based application, but industry doesn't have that time, does it? It hasn't got that luxury of putting off the production because they need to do a little bit more research. They haven't got that time to say, we'll put off that multi-million-dollar order and the building we're just about to have, we'll just stop halfway through and do a bit more research and see if we can come up with another question and another finding and another model. The other point about research is that it's often based upon a social problem. And if we use my own industry, one of the big research tickets is that family life and work balance. And yet our members in our construction industry often work over 70 hours a week. And we have lots of family breakdowns, lots of substance abuse problems. They haven't heard of the research which says that you need a family life balance because it can't exist in the nexus of what is the high pressure of the construction industry. Academia is wonderful. You need academia. You need the research. And it's a beautiful, peaceful, harmonious world. But industry isn't like that. It's very different. It's harsh, it's unforgiving, it's quite unflexible. It's achieve or else. Let's see how the industry can use that research. But let's also don't forget that research has its place, that industry may not be ready for the research which comes forward. And that's why all that health and safety research is no use to industry, but it's lovely to have for the academic world. Thank you.
Okay, these are my notes. They're empty. As academics, we're treating this a bit like we treat a lecture, and that is we are winging it, and we're making it up as we go along. How can you possibly challenge the notion that health and safety research is good for industry? Frankly, I'm astounded that anyone could challenge that. Without health and safety research, we would still believe that an accident is an act of God and with our own determination. Thanks to health and safety research, we can now live longer, live healthier, or those who take on the research, that is. Those who ignore it may very well ignore it at their peril. But in terms of the history and the tradition we have of health and safety research, it's long and it has a tremendous impact on everything that we do. Not that it was in my timeline, but the original domino theory has its place in everyday life. Its development through the decades, and up to what we now call the modern theory of, for example, James Reason's Swiss cheese model, that we have all very much academic. But the reality is, the high-risk industries such as petrochem and nuclear, that's their bread and butter. They live by that academic research. So of course, academic research has its place in influencing industry practice. In terms of the reason many of us are here today, the construction health and safety research that we all contribute to, of course, and the reason why most of the hands were raised in the air for against the motion. We can look at how, for example, the avalanche of research proving that construction health and safety is not just the realm of the contractor, but the designer and those who plan, and even the client has an impact. That, my friends, is what led to what we call in the European area as the Construction Temporary Works and Mobile Sites Directive, which in the UK we have as CDM. And it's the reason why we have so much new technology to assist us in that most deadly work at height, in which in recent years, again in the UK, we have managed to reduce these fatalities to a great extent. However, there may be some criticism come from the industry practitioners here on criticising that research and how it's led to maybe bureaucratic methods. However, what you can pick up is that whenever these problems do translate into industry, it's where possibly there's some vested interests, and those in industry are seeking to maybe muddy the waters intentionally. And what I would say is, if you work together with your academic colleagues, then maybe you'll get a bit more than you do at the moment. Particularly within construction, what is the budget for research and development within construction companies compared to other industries? You reap what you sow, guys. So those in industry, if you take notice of our academic endeavours, you may very well find there's some fruits to our labour. And just one final point before I get cut off. As an academic, I like the sound of my own voice. The trade unionist, can you possibly argue with the research that shows trade union sites are safer than non-unionised sites? I challenge you on that. The architect, can you possibly argue with the research that shows safety in design is actually worth it? And for the civil engineer, can you possibly challenge the ICE, the Institution of Civil Engineers, which invests a lot of time, money and effort into health and safety research? Thank you.
Thank you, Billy. Now I want you to take into account that Billy went 1 minute over his time. So could I then ask Joan to come up to the dais? Thank you, Joan.
Hi. In 2007, the EU published a communication called Improving Knowledge Transfer Between Research Institutions and Industries Across Europe. The need for a voluntary code such as this is a clear demonstration that research is no use to industry. I've been working as an architect for the last 20 years, and 8 years after this EU report was written, I had no idea there was such a huge body of research into construction health and safety. The first problem with academic research is that relevance to industry is not a key part of what academics see as success. University funding and league table standing in the UK are largely based on the amount and quality of research done, and much of this research is done by people who have never worked in industry and where success is measured by the number of articles that they publish or how much funding they attract. In addition, there's a dichotomy between intellectual rigour and real-world relevance. Experience is considered anecdotal and therefore doesn't make good science, and all of this means that research remains purely academic in nature. And speaking of research, I carried out some research to see what research was being done, and I turned to that ubiquitous authority, yep, you guessed it, Google. I ignored an article called Developing a Safety Indicator to Measure the Safety Level During Design for Safety. I don't even understand what that means, I'm a designer. I was tempted to look at a research project called Using Non-Human Biological Entities to Understand Pedestrian Crowd Behaviour Under Emergency Conditions. This apparently compares humans to ants. The third article I came across was the Health and Safety Executive's 2012 research report number 913 called Linking Health and Safety Activities, or HSE activities, to health and safety outcomes. This looked at the feasibility of developing quantitative links between HSE's ongoing activities and reductions in death, injury and causes of ill health due to work. In other words, they were seeking to link HSE activities to health and safety outcomes. And to cut a long report short, it concluded that the existing data simply does not allow a correlation to be shown between HSE activities and health and safety outcomes. Does not show. So even the health and safety executive themselves would not be in a position to provide evidence to counter today's motion. Another health and safety executive report number 467, the commercial case for applying CDM, notes that progress in health and safety is largely driven by reaction to failure, not by research, as Billy's point was made. The report goes on to suggest that practical experience trumps all. It says, and I quote, "There are a great many cases where creative thought, driven by the need to deliver success, also derive improvements in health and safety." And I quote again, that no amount of knowledge can match the ability to relate that knowledge to practical situations. So my conclusion is that it's not academic research, but a combination of legislation, coupled with practice, experience and technical expertise from designers, clients and contractors that delivers improvements in health and safety in construction. The most that researchers can actually hope to do is to make conclusions, which is actually what Billy said. They do research on what we actually do. Finally, I'm going to leave you with a quotation from the Institute of Occupational Safety and Health website. On their research database page, there is a glowing endorsement from a Mr. Joe Smith, and he might even be here today. And he says, "Just what I needed to help me on my way." That's high praise indeed, but can you guess where Joe works? No, he doesn't work in construction, not design or engineering or industry or any of those practical places. Joe works at Nottingham University. So, what we have is the Institution of Occupational Safety and Health are proud that their database of research is aimed at, used and loved by academics.
You may recall that I told you that you should disadvantage Billy because he would over his time. Well, Joe went over our time, so it's cancelled. So we're back in a level playing field. I'm going to ask Ciaran to come and address us.
Good evening, everyone. Well, like what Billy said, I'm not really prepared. So as a team, we're just winging it. And okay, anyway, okay, I think we have to focus on the topic for today's discussion, which is essentially all that safety and health research is no use to the industry. We're not saying that there are research that are of no use. We are focusing on all, right? So all we need to do is to highlight one or two examples and we're done, right? Pretty much. Yes, okay. And I think he has already highlighted several research. Professor James Reason's research have been extremely useful to many industries, not just the oil and gas. And the Swiss cheese model is used in all industries, even in the construction industry. We talk about barriers that should have been patched up, etc. And there's different investigation methods. I think the first, our worthy opponent, the first speaker here, was highlighting that the industry is always under pressure, there's no time for research, but that doesn't mean that we do not need research, right? The more that the industry is rushing, the more they need academic research to highlight issues that refocus the industry back to really important problems. And the other portion of it is that research is done by people without relevant experience in the industry. I think personally I worked in industry, I'm now in academia, I work as a consultant. I'm sure there are many examples of people who have worked in industry before joining the academia. And there are always research in terms of standards that are being created in different countries. I came from Singapore, I just use one, just all we need is one, right? So we've rated more than one. So I'm going to highlight another one to just back up our point. Is that our recent research in Singapore, we realized that in terms of design of the horizontal lifelines were inadequate. The methods used, but the industry people just went ahead, designed a lifeline based on static approach without taking care of the dynamic impacts. And we realized that issue, we highlighted in the paper, recommended to the government, we created a new Singapore standard on horizontal lifelines, design of horizontal lifelines. And that's another example to highlight how safety research, okay, safety and health research does add value and is definitely not purely academic. And in terms of the industry, I think worldwide we do get the industry funding research. So if it's useless, where's the funding coming from? Why are people wasting their money? I think industry is very practical. The more enlightened companies will look at the long run and they do invest in safety and health research. And the health portion, I'm very glad John highlighted this. And there's plenty of research on health issues. I just met a CDM expert from UK recently. He was highlighting that he read in a paper, academic paper, that in UK, as compared to Australia, the risk of solar radiation is actually higher in the UK because people just don't realize that it is a hazard. And in Australia, people are aware of this issue and they do the necessary. So highlighting this issue in the UK is going to save workers, I'm very sure. Yeah. So can I take a time?
Okay, so you've got the two first speakers, two second speakers, and now we're coming with the last speakers in each team, and they're going to summarise and reflect on the points made for and against the motion and offer a conclusion. So we're going to ask Kevin to come up here to the microphone. Kevin.
Before Hugh starts his clock, I'd just like to state that the views expressed by our group should be taken in the context of this debate and not necessarily taking the views of any of our employers or institutions. With that said, if you, picking up on Joan's point, if you put health and safety research into Google, within 0.6 seconds you get a list of 695 million top research topics to review. So that's a lot of research to wade through for our common professionals. It's a bit more than the two that Ciaran has asked us to take on board. The debate is all. Jerry has discussed recommendations that industry may be not ready for more research, and I would sort of concur with that. Joan's taken us through some of the research available online, but highlighted that the key health and safety executive documents which have failed to make a connection between the real life and the lack of a link between the health and safety activity and health and safety outcomes. I note that the research is not the primary driver of health and safety within my industry, and what actually drives my industry is the regulations. Within Northern Ireland, the various regulations are very general and look to cover most activities in a general way. One of these is RIDOR NI 1997, which is more a mechanism for reporting accidents rather than preventing them. Looking at Regulation 2 of that guidance, gives an interpretation of various definitions, and it defines dangerous goods. And you'll be interested to note that dangerous goods is any goods which fall within the definition of dangerous goods in the 1997 regulations, other than 1. Explosives, or 2. Radioactive material. So given that you're in Belfast, have you been concerned about explosives not being dangerous goods? The relevant piece of primary legislation for explosives is the Explosives Acts, which was published in 1875. And I'm reassured in Belfast that this was updated by the Explosive Act in Northern Ireland in 1970, and that will become relevant in a second. Looking at other regulations, we have the Health and Safety at Work Northern Ireland Order in 1978 and the Health and Safety at Work Amendment Order in 1998. And those haven't recently been updated in Northern Ireland. Taking aside, I'm a transport expert, so I note that the original Regulation of Railways Act was in way back in 1889, and this has recently been updated with the introduction of the Railways Safety Act in 2002. So the Railways Act has taken 102 years before it was updated, and the legislation for explosives took 95 years before it was updated. So where's all the research coming in to feed into those? Under our subordinate legislation, we've had more detail in recent years, and we've seen the CDM management regulations in Northern Ireland that came in 2007. But more importantly, the order which has most regularly been updated is the Health and Safety Fees Amendment regulation in Northern Ireland, and it's most recently updated in 2014 and has been updated every couple of years over the last couple of decades. So what does that tell us about research and regulations coming on board? So I put it to you that within the construction industry, we're driven by old legislation and not research. And that is what we are legally obliged to adhere to. And this has been updated to take account of the this hasn't been updated to take account of the 695 million topics of research that my colleagues on the other side have to take on board if we are to take on board all the legislation, all the research.
Spot on. Thank you, Kevin. So, last but by no means least, we're going to ask Matt to summarise his side of the arguments. Matt.
He's booming. You're in for it, yeah? Okay.
You've got to wing it.
Oh, I know. And I didn't Google anything. Okay, so to start here, I'll offer a few new perspectives that both sides have kind of referenced here, and that is that academics should focus on practical problems. And I'll offer an alternative viewpoint that academics shouldn't focus on practical problems, but rather learning new things that can be translated to the solution to practical problems. So, as we've heard, the industry might not be ready for additional research. We've heard a lot recently about regulations and the ability to stay current with regulations, but I would say that's a symptom of the industry being too slow in their uptake. So rather, maybe as we create new knowledge as academics, we can learn from those new solutions or translate that new knowledge to new solutions. I think there's also a disconnect between intellectual rigor and professional experience. So if you look at the way that research is performed, it's meant to de-bias some of those experience-related things. If you take anybody's particular experience, it's often a very narrow experience of one particular company or two particular companies. And academia is meant to filter that and gain experience from many different people from many different companies. I think the job of the industry is to learn, and the job of the academics is to discover new things that can be learned. And it leads me to the point of where does your knowledge come from? So, hundreds of years ago we thought the world was flat until we did some research and people postulated new ideas and we tested them. Now we know the world isn't flat. Similar to, in the safety realm, we know that injuries are not necessarily caused just by people acting unsafely or acting God. It's a systematic cause of injuries. So that all is born through academic research, and I'd argue that the things we learn today aren't necessarily to solve the problems that you have right now, but perhaps to solve the problems that you have 10, 20, 30 years in the future that you might learn from. And I'll just leave it with one controversial thought, in that oftentimes practitioners will try to solve their own problems with their own solutions, and oftentimes we'll notice that practitioners' solutions to their own problems is often biased towards job security and position security, whereas some of the more basic academic research is to just understand the way the world works.
Thank you. Okay, we're now moving to the next section. Thank you everybody who have come to the platform here and made their case. We're now going to have what we call a head-to-head debate. This is going to take about 25 minutes, and I'm going to be very strict on time. And each team have to present a challenging question to their opposition. And I'm sure you have some challenging questions, and please you can either speak from the table or you can come up to the microphone, whatever you feel more comfortable doing. So I suspect we're going to ask if Jerry wants to lead on a challenging question, or one of your team wants to lead the challenging question for the opposition, and then we take a similar approach from the opposition. Okay.
Can I make a point?
Yeah, you can go first.
Just the point on the word being flat.
Can everybody hear the back?
That's just recording.
Sorry.
Are you sure that's correct?
Okay, my point. My point was you found out that the word was flat because you researched the word, or found out the word was not flat. The word is not flat because they built the boat and somebody got wrong. Did something.
You're going to have to repeat that, Joe.
I said my point about the word, and we found out that it wasn't flat because of research. The reason we found out the word wasn't flat was because somebody built a boat and they modeled it. They did something, they did some practice, and from that practice they found out stuff.
Well, they got on the boat because they learned about water displacement.
Was that your question? That was just a different kind of think of a question.
So the moral of the story is the academics agree that they got on. I think in recent years, despite not having changes in legislation, in Northern Ireland in particular, we have seen a reduction in accidents in construction. So if we are achieving this without changes in legislation, why do we need more research? Can you restate? No.
Right. Could I ask you, for the sake of our colleagues at the back, to pass the microphone around? Okay, thank you.
What I was saying was that in recent years, despite not having changes in legislation, we have seen a reduction in accidents on our construction sites in Northern Ireland. So if we are already achieving this, why do we need more research?
I can start. I think the question has the implicit assumption that academic research is somehow connected to regulation, when I'd argue that sometimes regulations come as a consequence of some academic research, but that they're not one and the same. So creating a causal link between how much regulation there is and the safety performance of the industry, I think is completely independent of how much academic research is going on.
If I could just add to that, I would say that improvements in health and safety performance is not so much dependent on legislation. It has its place, but real improvements over recent years has been down to a determination by industry, has to be accepted, to say we won't accept this anymore and we want to improve things. And it's how they then have gone about that. And it's the engagement with academia to find the patterns and find the answers and inform the decision making. Now that sounds very, very arrogant of me to say that, but here's the reality. If you're in industry to make profit and that's your main focus, and you are far too busy to stand back and take a breath and just watch what's happening. I freely admit that as an academic, I don't want to get involved in industry anymore. The implication there is that I did work in industry and I'm not a blue sky academic. But I plainly, when I talk to industry, one of the first things I say is, I've got that time to stand back and observe what you're doing and make inferences and make predictions and do the scientific bit that helps you to improve. That's what I would say. That's what improves the industry, not necessarily legislation.
That's a bit slow making my question ready. We're currently going through a potential free trade agreement in Australia with China. There's been a lot of talk about the benefits or otherwise of that free trade agreement. But one issue which hasn't been solved is the health and safety, or the potential agreement when the entire workforce can come over from a foreign country and perhaps build a major building, $150 million, $200 million. 2012 in China, the conservative estimate of workplace deaths was a staggering 78,000 people. So 200 people a day died in China. While I was waiting for my transit bus at Heathrow on Tuesday morning, going from Terminal 4 to Terminal 2, there was a BBC business report, and it shone the light on the Indian tea manufacturing processes, and it was horrific. And it wasn't third world standard, it was 33rd world standard. My question, I suppose, is what more, or how much research does anybody need to A, say and to prevent 200 people dying a day, to raise the standards of these people in India who are literally working in probably the worst conditions I have come across in over 20, 30, 50 years. We don't need research to say that is wrong. We don't need research to say to industry, you can't do that. It's immoral, it's unethical. How does the research assist those people? We know industry takes shortcuts. The construction industry, just in Victoria where I'm involved, we are forever walking on a construction site to say stop. That is wrong. Why are you doing it that way? Why are you putting people at work at heights where there is no protection? And the answer invariably comes back indirectly. It's time and money. We haven't got the time, and there are huge financial penalties. They don't need research to tell them that it's wrong, but they need some application and some proper enforcement. We don't need the research to say that's wrong. We just need the industry to take note.
Right, again, thank you.
Thanks for that. I think it's definitely brings us back to the reality that we're facing. Right? In many countries, I think it's not about something that's very far away. We're looking at real fatalities, families being affected. But I think we have to look at the bigger picture. There's definitely burning problems facing us in different parts of this world in terms of safety and health. But do we just look at current problems and not think about the longer term? And at the same time, there was many mentions about that safety research, safety and health research doesn't solve the problems directly. It's industry doing things. We have to look at it in a very holistic manner because you have research, legislation, you have people on the ground, industry. I think all these need to come together. Okay? If you leave it to any one individual party to work on this huge problem of safety and health, it will never work, especially in the long run. You might prevent the first fatality today, okay? But if you don't have the right system in place that takes into account culture, takes into the economic problems, etc., I think you are only solving that one particular problem, and you're going to have another fatality tomorrow. Right? So we have to harness this research, the legislation, and also the industry coming together. So I would say that definitely research plays a role, but it is not a magic bullet or a silver bullet.
Okay, is there a question from our academics for our colleagues from industry?
Yeah, I just want to pick up on something that Jerry says towards the end of his opening remarks, and that was that I think that if I'm paraphrasing or if I'm wrong, correct me, Jerry, I think you'd said at the very end, industry was not ready for health and safety research, was it along those lines?
No.
No. Sounds like it anyway. But if you can check your notes, and get back to me, just winging it. Well, let's just assume for a moment that the industry is not interested in academic research then, hard as it may sound. And tell me what you, or any of the panel for industry, what is it that's so wrong with what academics do? You've touched on it somehow, but what needs to change? Is the question.
I did say I love the research. I think it's wonderful. But it's in another world, and industry operates in almost a separate time zone than the research. When I was doing my own PhD, it was that beautiful, peaceful, serene setting. But you go out of that and you go into industry, you realise that you just haven't got time to do that. I think what needs to happen is the research needs to be made more relevant, to take into account the particulars and the high pressure variables that come to industry in getting the job done or getting a production line completed. I always laugh at companies who say safety is our #1 priority. Well, it can't be, because if you're a company, your #1 priority, or an organisation who wants to make money, that's your main priority. You need to make money, otherwise you don't exist. And I think safety has to be a big part of that. And the same with research. We need the research, but it has to be part of the industry forum, and probably made to be more applicable to industry, to have more relevance than perhaps it currently does.
John?
Yeah, I touched a little bit on success in academia, because we talk about it a lot in architecture, what's successful to be an architect, and in some circles being a successful architect is winning lots of awards, but in other circles being a successful architect is delivering a project on time, on budget, and as a site with no accidents. So there are lots of definitions of success, and I think for research to be useful to industry, the researchers have got to be, as a body, as proud of the people who are useful to industry as they are of the people who publish lots of reports. And I think that's missing. And until researchers get there and doing stuff for the real world is as important as, or as legitimate as doing stuff for the sake of improving knowledge, then there's always going to be two classes of research or two classes of activity between researchers, because in architecture, lots of architects think that if you don't win awards, you're not as good an architect than the people who do.
Ciaran?
I think that to follow on from that, we as industry sit on boards with our academic colleagues, we sit in the same mountain. We're looking at what's best for our young engineers, our young architects, our young professionals coming out of the industry. But research on its own is not enough. What we're putting into our leaders, our staff, is that they need to be properly trained, they need to be aware of the health and safety issues. They need to have a duty of care, so that if they see something that's not right, as Jerry says, they have to stop it. That's not influenced by the research, that's influenced by how they're operating, how they're trained, and how they're delivering sites with no accidents.
Responses from our colleagues in academia to that?
Yeah. Yeah. I just, to be specific for a moment, I've tried to resist from making references to my own work and the work that I do, try to keep it generic. But there have been moves in the last year or so in the UK when we are assessed on our research, when I say we, I mean universities in the UK, are assessed on our research pedigree. A new item which is assessed is something known as impact, which has had a tremendous change in UK research and my own area of construction health and safety research. I guess in other areas which has been touched on in other countries and other regions, we call this research to practice. But in the past, there's been a certain arrogance, I think, from academics that we are the guys in the white coats and we stand and we analyse industry and we come up with a eureka moment where we decide this will change everything. And what this change, particularly in the UK, and I think it will happen globally, is that we now have to demonstrate that our research has impact. And what we mean by impact, and what the UK government means by impact, is we need tangible, measurable outputs of our impact. And the last year I put forward, as part of our institution, my impact, which was the research leading to 100,000 plus training sessions, although that might sound crap to some people, on improvements to health and safety with regards to the management of non-English speaking workers, had impact on various other items in terms of communication and worker engagement, and how engaging workers in health and safety to hold a mirror to management would improve safety practices long term, and again adopted by the CITB, the Construction Industry Training Board, which I guess not many academics can within the UK can say that they've done. So I think things are changing, and I think we are becoming more relevant to industry. So hopefully, I don't know, I'll probably get shot down in flames, but hopefully that will appease some of the other side's concerns.
Some appeasement there, yeah. Thank you.
You'll be asleep.
Just move over there.
Kevin, you coming back on that? Any other comments or new questions from the panel? Yes, Ciaran.
Just a quick comment. I think we have to focus on our topic of the debate. So I think the relevance portion is definitely an issue that academia are concerned with, the industry is concerned with. But today, the focus on all that safety and health research is no use to the industry. I just want to refocus the discussion back to this point, and we have to stay focused on that. And it's just purely academic, and I think we have really seen many examples. From the other angle, I would like to ask our worthy opponents, so why is it that the industry is still funding safety and health research then?
Aha. So if research is not that important, why are they pumping millions into research?
I think that the answer to that is that some of that research is useful, but all of it certainly isn't.
Good enough.
What? The motion is all, not some.
Do you want to come back on that?
Can I give an example of what I mean? We've just had new CDM regulations in the UK, and some of you might not know what that is, but it's health and safety legislation that is about construction and managing construction and design in particular. And it's not introduced in Northern Ireland yet because we just had a consultation on it. And the change of the regulations was based on quite a bit of research that was done about how effective the regulations were. And one of the key reasons that it's not been implemented in Northern Ireland is because the research told them that they could just implement the English regulations in Northern Ireland because our industry was the same. And us as practitioners pointed out that they were about to apply this legislation to domestic construction in Northern Ireland. And we said domestic construction in Northern Ireland isn't the same as it is in the UK, but they came back and went, but our research says it is. And I went, no, it's not. In England, people build grand designs and they get builders in to build their houses. In Northern Ireland, people start with a digger. And under the CPM regulations, you've got to have a principal contractor who's responsible for safety. So all of this new legislation, which was based on what was considered to be very sound research, was telling the domestic construction industry in Northern Ireland, the first person on site is your principal contractor. And in Northern Ireland, that's a man with a digger. And he's going to be responsible for health and safety for the rest of the job.
Just add one to the question of why do companies or corporations still fund research. We had a company in 2012 who pleaded guilty when a brick wall bordering their site, which they had a big sign on, and had done no engineering assessments on the capacity of that wall to hold it. No design drawings, no computations done before, during or after. That wall fell down and killed 3 innocent people, a 17 and an 18-year-old brother and sister, and a 33-year-old French national who was out doing some postdoctorate work. And it was just across the road from our building, and we were one of the first people on the scene trying to say to them how first aid trainers doing all the things. They pleaded guilty and they got fined $250,000 for that offence, but they would keep putting in money into research. I think a lot of corporations do that to become a good corporate citizen, unfortunately, and it's a way for them to promote their safety. And I suppose it's a bit similar that it's very visual when you see someone not wearing a hard hat or perhaps safety glasses. And it's easy to pick on that person, but if the system isn't able to absorb that error, then it's not much of a system. Like my esteemed colleague said, in that same way, corporations put money in so they almost have a facade about what they do so well. So perhaps that's the answer why corporations still continue to fund.
Okay, we've come to the end of the head-to-head. Now we're going to have 10 minutes for you to ask questions. Please don't be shy. Don't shy away from being controversial. When you do have a question, please stand up, say who you are and where you're from, and then we can decide, or you may have a question for a particular panel member, or different panel members may want to address your question. So, yes, sir.
Thank you, Joe.
It's a great
shows that industry doesn't need a research, doesn't it? Because you read a book. Anyway.
Actually, myself on flight.
Now, I do have two questions to ask each of the two panelists. For the industry first, apart from the three, how many of the audience also from industry?
Up hands, and many of the audience are from industry.
Yeah, so, 6. Now, I have two.
That's 3 votes we've got.
Do you truly believe that academic research is not relevant? I put aside the argument for the sake of argument. Do you truly believe that?
I think we need to do some more research on that.
The question is to the academics. Do we want to create a better, safer, healthier society, or do we do our research for the sake of doing research? Which one do you choose?
The first.
The first one, for the safer. So that means we do have a desire for a better, safer society. So the question is how, right? At the moment, our research is cross-section, commutatory research. It's not intervention, it's not longitudinal. So we need to think about, it is true, industry is focused on time cost quality. We need to think about our research is value adding to what they're doing. Unless we change our mindset, we will not be able to get the industry on our board. At the same time, we need to tell the industry, our research is rigorous, able to add value. I did my first research, it's actually the global construction firm coming asked me to do research to evaluate their safety program. Is that effective? And from there on, I actually thought it's actually we can contribute to what they're doing, to add value. And then I also did another research for the industry safety training program. What I'm trying to say here is that we actually is one family. We want a better, safer society. And we've got to work together. The key here is help. Industry, please change your mindset. We academics are good at research, and we can help to add your value. Academics, researchers, students, think of an alternative way of research that we can really work with the industry that we live on. I mentioned that already. And to do so, I do have a chapter on industry research practice nexus. It's a longitudinal 7-step framework. Having said that, it's not by any means of promoting the book, but I do deeply believe that we can work together. And that is my comment. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I comment on that?
Kevin's going to comment on that and we'll comment on that.
Just a comment on that. I didn't realise there was 4 people on the academic team. And for the record, Patrick went over the 3 minutes. I think just to sort of comment on that, what we're trying to do as industry, and we sit on our industrial liaison panel for our universities, but we're sitting there to make sure that the graduates that are coming out are properly trained, that they're aware of what the hazards are, what the risks are, they're aware of what their safety and health concerns are going to be. So as Jerry said, when they go onto a site, they can say stop. They're trained to do that, and that's what we're trying to do, and that's why we're sitting with the academia.
Okay, Ciaran, well spotted. I'll come to you in a second, sir. So we've got 4 or 5 questions. This lady, one at a time.
Okay, I'm McAleenan from the University. I don't know whether you agree with me. I look at it this way. It's like a disease. The practitioners want somebody to just tell them what's the remedy, what's the medicine to take away this disease. Whereas the academician is looking why, the source of the disease. Why does the disease occur? But because we think if we can find the source, then we can take away the disease and the practitioners don't have to pay money to buy the medicine. So it's a win-win situation actually.
So far you have no questions. You just comments. Have anybody with a question?
I have a question for the academics.
Stand up, please.
My name's Tom Mills and I'm from Virginia Tech, and I have a question for the academics. It's a lengthy question, but it will not be 3 minutes. Please share with me, if practitioners cannot crack the title of the research, how would you expect them to crack the research? If they're able to crack the title and the research is then 10 pages long when 4 pages would do, how do you expect them to deal with that? And if they then crack the 10 pages and they realize that the research is 25, 30 years out and written for another academic to come through, how many times do you expect the practitioner to go back to the well for a usable piece of research?
Can I give you a title just to help?
Hold on.
Research called Developing a Safety Indicator to Measure the Safety Level During Design for Safety.
Okay. Could I suggest you become brief because there are 4 or 5 other people.
So briefly, number one, not all safety research is good. And health research. Not all of it's good, some of it's terrible, right? And the other thing is I think there's a strong disconnect between the research community and the professional community and how the research results are translated to practical solutions, right? In the US, we have the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health that has their research to practice program, and some people might think it's good, some people might think it's terrible. You have to make your own judgment. But I think that, there are some models out there of how to translate new findings to practical solutions, and that needs to happen more, and it needs to be a two-way street, right? Industry needs to help with some resources and providing their perspectives. At the same time, the academics need to provide their resources and their efforts to solve the problem via the answers to questions. So I think, it's a partnership problem. And the fact that you have these terrible titles is that's our fault, right? It's academics. But the length of the papers, the fact there aren't new solutions, it's a partnership problem.
Okay, next question. Okay, this gentleman here. Yes, sir.
Thanks, man. John Gambittis, Oregon State University. And I'm an academic right now, as many of you know, and I do have some industry experience too, but I have a perspective that I'm going to ask the practice side a question, but I want to get there thinking to myself as I do my research, do we need more research, or do we know how to be safe already, but we choose not to be safe? And I ask myself that question when we go on the projects. Where do we know how to be safe, but we choose not to, for whatever reason, whether it's at the worker level, the foreman level, the project manager, the president, the CEO, wherever we are, and so forth. So I think that's one perspective. But I wanted to mix it up a little bit to maybe test the question in a different way by asking the opposite and say, all industry, all practice is of no use to academia. And I want to ask that question, whether you agree with that on the side here. Do you get the change? All practice is of no use to academia, because maybe what we're talking about are different questions, and we're focusing on 20, 30 years from now that maybe aren't applicable right now, but maybe if I can ask that question of the practice. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I answer the first bit of it? Is do we choose not to be safe? I think every single one of us every day does things that makes us that we choose not to be safe. If you were going to be safe, you would do nothing, because nothing that we do is safe. And it is actually ingrained in our training as architects and the things that we look at. Obviously, the first thing you do is this thing inherently unsafe? And then you go, well, I'll just not do it. But building inside a railway is inherently unsafe. But if you need a building, you go, I'll not put the building there then. And your client goes, oh, or it's a railway building, you need a building inside the railway. You know, so there are all sorts of decisions that you make, and you can't just choose not to be safe. You've got to choose to do the safest thing in the circumstances. But I do think that when you get down to a level of things that people do on site, and the decisions that are made about how things are constructed on very simple sites and very complicated sites, people choose all the time to do things that are not safe. Because it's easier than doing the thing that's safe, whether that's just because they can't be bothered putting their legs in their harness and clipping it on properly because it's going to take them 30 seconds longer to do the job. And in a lot of cases, I would argue that's not driven by money, it's just driven by inconvenience to the person, you know. So it's a fair question, but we choose every day to do things that are not safe.
Okay, I am going to move forward
Can I just
very briefly because there's a few more people.
I
Go ahead.
agree with John, but I think Matt summed it up beautifully when he said, and again I'm paraphrasing, the partnership needs more work between industry and academia. It needs more rigour, it needs more strength to achieve what we know it can, but importantly what it should be able to achieve. And I think that's the key.
Okay, two more questions. This gentleman here in the second row.
I just have one quick one. My name is Ciaran, I come from Sweden. I love the point that the academic world says that we need this. But still today, when I meet an architect that's coming from the university, they haven't read one word safety. Civil engineers, they haven't a course in safety, and they send them to us in the industry. I think you need to go back and have the test there.
Thank you. Good comment. This gentleman in the third row, and then two more, and that's it.
I'm Richard Mayo, University of Winchester, UK. My question is this problem entirely caused by pro-vice chancellors of research and
Guilty as charged.
The point I'm making is that I don't believe, I started off my career as a construction site manager, actually in McAleenan near Ciaran. And then I became an academic. And I was wedded to the view that my work had to be practical and useful. Now, in 40 years of confusing students or whatever academics do, I've met a lot of academics, and I don't believe, seriously, that academics do not wish to engage with industry and do something useful. I just don't believe this idea that we retreat into this, what do you call it? Cozy, academic, whatever it is. I don't believe that. The issue is, and Billy Hare put the point that now in the UK we have this impact thing, we've got to demonstrate impact. But Billy, that's just another damn thing you've got to do. That's not instead of what this guy wants you to do, right? Because what he wants you to do is get stuff in high-level academic referee journal papers with academic rigour.
And titles you can't understand.
And what's all this rubbish? You haven't put it into SPSS, it can't be any good. No, seriously, so that's my question to the Pro-Vice Chancellor. But my real proposal, if you like, is that this is a research organisation, and we're about, during the next 2 days, to map out a roadmap for research. Surely, one of the research questions we can answer or ask is how can we best coordinate? How can we find out what works and what doesn't work when academics try, and they do diligently in my belief, try to do something useful for industry. So you haven't got a job at the moment.
Thank you. Okay.
As a former industry person who came to academia, you might call that a failed industrialist, possibly. In my early years, I used to be very argumentative when someone from industry would say statements like, "Those who can't do, teach." And over the years, I've mellowed and I've decided, yeah, that's true. But as someone who's came from industry, I firmly believe that my research has industry application, but I don't diss career academics who have never spent time in industry, because they also have their place. They are the blue sky thinkers, the SPSS wonders, and a good mix of the two makes for a good academic unit which can have impact on industry. I am asked, and it's a relatively new phenomenon for me, but I am asked now on a regular basis from industry, "Billy, can you look at this problem? Can you come up with some answers? Can you research this issue for us? Because we don't really know what to do." And I'm not making that up. That happens now on a very regular basis. I guess that means I'm reaching that point when I can call myself an expert. I don't know. But what's the point I'm making? I'm now going off at a tangent. I don't know where I'm going with this. But
typical academic. Sorry.
But I guess the point I am trying to make is that, without a doubt, if you've got a good mix of academic rigour and academics with industry experience and practice, you can make that link and you can have impact. The problem I have, and this is just personally, is that academia, particularly in the UK, is forcing us to appoint staff with a PhD, with research publications, and all the rest, that is pushing us down the road of the pure academic person, maybe your Pro-Vice-Chancellor, and making it more difficult for us to appoint people like myself who have industry experience, who then gain a PhD, who then go on to do good things. And I believe that I do good things.
And I agree with that. I'm sorry, we're running out of time. I've just two colleagues left, and I'll take this gentleman in the fourth row. You need to speak up, Patrick.
I'm Patrick Mann from UWE. The question on my mind really is, whether this talk of zero harm is achievable, and because I've been thinking about this for some time now, and when I do think about it, what I tell myself is maybe yes, maybe no, and if no, then are we wasting our time? Because if we cannot reach something we are striving for, and we are investing time and money into it, then maybe perhaps it's of no use doing that. Okay, and the other thoughts to that comes to mind, or maybe perhaps it is human beings that do get hurt, and so maybe perhaps if we move towards the age of the Jetsons, where robots do things, then we wouldn't have the harm, and maybe we will have should I say a zero harm industry. So that's the question I have for us, and that is whether we sincerely believe that we can achieve a zero harm industry, and if so, what are the sort of things perhaps we should.
Okay, Patrick, thank you. Is there such a thing as zero harm? I'll take one from each side, and I'll start over here on that side of the house.
There's been a lot of talk about the zero injury goal for quite some time, I think for the last decade. And just to offer a perspective on it, I don't think it's necessarily a goal that is meant to be achieved and that nobody ever gets hurt ever, but rather a philosophy that people should adhere to, that no injury is acceptable, right? So in my mind, I'm going to trip on my way out of here on a flat rock in this room, but this is nobody's fault other than I'm a human being, right? But if you go on site and you see somebody that gets hurt with two pipes smashed together and hurt somebody's hand, that's not, you should never be seen as an acceptable injury. So I think it's more about philosophy than a goal. Although by setting that lofty goal, we can only get closer and closer. So even if we get close to the goal, that's better than not having the goal in the first place. In my opinion.
Jerry, over here.
I think it's, does anyone play golf? Anyone play golf here? Okay, I play golf badly too. Have you ever seen golfers actually put the tee down, put the ball and they walk back? It's a long range and forward. They go up and they walk it. They know full well they're not going to get a hole in one. They still do it. Because they try, it's what Matt just said, it's that philosophy. It's that golfing philosophy. I'm going to really try my hardest. Even though I know it's highly unlikely. But one day they might. That's terrific, but they'll never do it again. But they still go through the motions, and I think that's what we have to do as industry and researchers. You have to have that philosophy, otherwise there's no point. You can't accept one injury, so you need to keep going until maybe you will get that hole in one.
Okay, last question. We're having a bit of a love in here. They're beginning to agree with each other. Last question. This gentleman here.
They're fine looking group of guys, aren't they?
Fellow McAleenan, I work as a consultant in safety here in Northern Ireland. It's coming back to yourself and the discussion about the man or the woman with the digger. Now, it's a question I think for both industry and academia in that regard, because it seemed to me that there was the sort of suggestion that this person shouldn't really be taking responsibility for the safety of the overall project. Now, I haven't read all of the 690 million safety research papers yet, but it seems to me there's a dearth of research into why the person who is supposed to have safety thrust upon them doesn't in actual fact have responsibility for his or her own safety. And on the industry side of it, it also seems to be this lack of trust or maybe a lack of faith in the ability for the man or the woman with the digger or the shovel or whatever it is to have responsibility for their own safety. My question is, why is this so? Why is this not being addressed?
Thank you. Who wants to go first?
I certainly wasn't suggesting that the digger driver didn't have responsibility for his own safety, but I was saying that it was a nonsense to appoint him as the person who was responsible for health and safety in the project, because he wasn't going to be there when the electrician was on site, because he's gone. He's on a different site driving his digger, so the legislation didn't make any sense. I think this personal safety thing is one of the biggest challenges that we have, and I don't know how research fixes this. I was on a site where we had an accident that could have been really horrible. It was bad enough, but it was a site where a client had those little automated pallet trucks, and everybody who went on the site was trained because they knew the pallet trucks were there. Every construction person, every person that worked on the site, and a guy got knocked off a ladder by one of these little pallets. And it turned out that this guy borrowed a pass of his friend. He wasn't inducted. He chose not to go to the place where he was inducted. He got to site, he couldn't find the ladder. Somebody else gave him a ladder, which was the kind of ladder that's not allowed on the site. So there were 4 or 5 different places where the accident could have stopped. But this guy had no thought for his own safety. Never mind the fact that there were, things that could have picked up along the way. So this personal safety thing is a huge problem, particularly, where we've got and we've dealt with the bigger issues of safety in this country, which have not been dealt with, where Jerry's been talking about in other countries. But personal safety, I don't know how the research fixes the problem of people having no care for their own health and safety.
And the opposing side, Matt?
I think the point of who's responsible for whose safety in the construction industry is nearly an impossible question to answer, simply because it's not a manufacturing facility where one group designs and owns the process and builds the widget and sends the widget out the other side. It's designers and clients and contractors and subcontractors and all of these different entities on site, and we try to impose, in the US for example, that the contractor who employs the worker is responsible, and that's it. Right? And then now with the CDM, now the designer is partially responsible, but for what? Right? So I don't think it's necessarily a question from the research side that can be answered, but something we're going to struggle with as an entire industry of academics and practitioners for a long time, simply because of the nature of our industry. It's so fragmented.
Okay, we've come to the end of it. Sorry for those of you who had questions to ask, but didn't get round to it. Could I, on your behalf, please show your appreciation for... When Ciaran asked me to do this, I don't think he knew that for 10 years I was one of the editors of a journal called Journal of Quality and Safety in Healthcare. And everything that's come up tonight I can empathise with. The 0 errors, which will never happen in healthcare. People will die, doctors differ, patients die, as we know. The issue about the research practice gap. This could be any conference. There's always going to be a research practice gap. Some people say it's a good thing because you have a gap between research and practice, then you're always moving forward. And some people criticise it, and it was good to see and hear the views tonight. And what this has led to, at least in my field in healthcare, is that we've had more and more regulation. And this is almost, we're so busy dealing with regulation and audits that it's difficult to get on doing the job. So there's like paralysis through analysis, which I'm sure none of us want, but unfortunately we've come to that situation. Okay, what I would like to ask you to do is, considering everything you've heard, I want another show of hands. So could I see, in terms of my colleagues here on my near right, our industry team, for the motion that all health and safety research is of no use to industry, it's merely an academic exercise. Who would agree with that? Let's see the hands. Oh my goodness. Okay. Sorry, I wonder should we actually answer the next question. But just in case there's a lot of people sitting on the fence, who would then be against the motion? Let's see a show of hands, please. Okay. There are some people who haven't voted, but that's interesting. So could I ask you again once more to thank the team on the right-hand side in terms of the academic team. And please thank their worthy opponents one more time. Thank you. So we're coming to a close. As the Deputy Lord Mayor said, if this is your first time in Belfast, I assure you, you're going to see some of the best pubs and restaurants that you find anywhere in the world. And you'll find people who are the most friendliest and welcome of people. And they have a weird sense of humour. And I'm going to give you 2 examples before we close. We were at a conference a few weeks ago, and the conference related to computing. And I was talking to someone at the conference, and they said, did any of you fly into Belfast International Airport? Yeah? Okay, so that's about 20-25 miles away from where we're sitting at the moment in Belfast City Centre. So they were trying to make conversation with the taxi driver on the way down from the airport, and the conversation was, well, why did they build the airport so far away from the city centre? And the taxi driver said, because that's where the planes land. So that's an example. That's one example. I have loads of those taxi driver jokes for me. Anyway, I'm going to finish up with one more. About a few years ago, I was in China, and I was going to a place called Shenyang in northeastern China, and I flew into Beijing, and the plane was cancelled from Beijing to Shenyang. So I went to a local hotel, and it was in the middle of the day, and I said, what is there to do around there? And they said, have you ever been to the Great Wall of China? And I said, no. And they said, well, it's just not far from here. You can take a bus from the hotel here to the Great Wall of China. I said, that's what I'll do. So as I was walking up the Great Wall of China, I remembered that England was playing Northern Ireland in soccer. And I wanted to know the result. And I said, well, back home it's about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. Who would be up? Who would know the result and who would be up? And then I thought, in the university there are security men who are up all night. So I rang the university and I said, this is Hugh McKenna, I'm on the Great Wall of China, I have a bad signal, but could you tell me who won the football match tonight between England and Northern Ireland? And I could hear him talking to his colleague, and he says, it's Professor McKenna. He's in some Chinese restaurant. And I think he's pissed. So hopefully over the next couple of days you will meet many people who will be very welcome to you. And I hope you have a fantastic
fantastic conference and that you will take away something positive with you that will either change you or your career. One more time for our colleagues here on the top.
Who's on our